You feel it before you see it. Steam curling through stone corridors like smoke from a hidden fire, voices murmuring in the haze, and water sliding over bare flesh with ritual slowness. This was no ordinary bath. This was the Ottoman hammam, sacred, sensual, and steeped in contradiction. On the surface, it was a place of purity and prayer. But beneath the marble and ritual cleansing, it became something else entirely, a theater of unspoken longing. In a world where same-sex desire was punished or erased, the bathhouse offered a rare sanctuary, where eyes lingered, hands hovered, and the body spoke the things the tongue could not. This is not a story of subtle hints or coded language. It is a story of men who desired, not in metaphors alone, but in glances, in touches, and in the silence between them. What took place within the marble walls of the hammam may not have always been acted upon, but it was undeniably felt. The bathhouse became a crucible of forbidden emotion, made all the more powerful by its ritualized intimacy, its erotic proximity, and its demand for total discretion. The rituals of heat, water, and touch. At its core, the hammam was a communal place, a fusion of ancient Roman bathing culture and Islamic religious practice. The bathing process was a structured journey through a series of progressively warmer rooms. Men would begin in a cool changing area, then proceed through warm and hot steam rooms, their bodies gradually softening under waves of heat. The architecture itself encouraged introspection and stillness. Natural light filtered through small dome windows, illuminating the mist with an almost sacred glow. Thick stone walls trapped heat, enclosing patrons in a cocoon of silence, sweat, and sensory immersion. At the center of this ritual stood the telak, young male attendants responsible for bathing the clients. Their work involved vigorous scrubbing, massage, rinsing, and handling of the body in ways both methodical and intimate. They would press their oiled hands into muscles, pour water over heads and chests, and glide across limbs with practiced grace. While these acts were ostensibly functional, for some men, particularly those who harbored same-sex attraction, the experience transcended its hygienic purpose. The structure of the hammam, its physical closeness, and its social norms created an environment where attraction could flicker to life under the cover of propriety. The hammam equalized. Men of different social classes entered naked and left cleansed, but it also eroticized. It brought bodies together, glistening, relaxed, undressed, not just in exposure, but in attention. And for those who lived with forbidden desire, it offered a setting where that desire, for once, didn't have to hide. It could not be spoken, but it could be felt. The body, touched under the pretense of service, could imagine other possibilities. A telak's hands, while dutiful, might linger. A bather's gaze might fix too long on the curve of a hip or the rise of a chest. And although nothing overt could happen, everything under the surface vibrated with implication. Between service and desire. The role of the telak was central to this emotional tension. Often selected for their youth and beauty, telaks navigated the space as both laborers and objects of attention. They were strong, quiet, composed, yet always physically present, always near. They poured water slowly over their clients' backs, pressed into shoulders, wrapped towels with tender precision. Their hands performed expected tasks, but for those watching, those yearning, each motion was heavy with potential meaning. Was that a pause? Was that look returned? Could it possibly mean more? And still, nothing could be said. One man might lie awake after a visit to the hammam, replaying every moment with a telak, the weight of his hand on a thigh, the heat of his breath against the neck, the steady rhythm of massage that seemed to speak without words. The bathhouse did not permit declarations or confessions, but it permitted sensation. And in that silence, longing filled the void. Clients learned to navigate desire without exposure. A bather might arrive early or stay late, hoping to encounter the same telak again. He might choose a certain position on the marble slab, angle himself toward another man in the pool, or watch carefully in the mirror's reflection, rather than face someone directly. These gestures were small but intentional, and in a place where nudity and closeness were routine, they allowed for a form of coded communication. Touch was allowed, expected even, but emotion had to be masked with restraint. This tension was both thrilling and painful. The forbidden nature of same-sex attraction in Ottoman society meant that even the act of looking carried risk. To be interpreted as interested could bring shame, rejection, or worse. Yet the hammam made interest possible. In its rituals, men could come dangerously close to what they wanted, even if they could never admit it. The language of longing. Outside the hammam, desire found refuge in poetry. Ottoman literature, shaped by Persian and Arabic traditions, used metaphor to express the inexpressible. The ghazal, a poetic form centered on love and longing, was a vehicle for forbidden emotions. Within its lines, male beauty was exalted, the beloved described as radiant, cruel, unattainable. His skin like ivory, his eyelashes like daggers, his presence both a blessing and a torment. These verses often contained no gendered pronouns, allowing plausible deniability. But those who read closely, especially those who had known the weight of desire in the hammam, could see the truth embedded in the imagery. The rose was not a rose. The gazelle was not an abstraction. They were men, beautiful, tender, and impossibly distant. Poetry gave voice to those who could not speak. It let men name what they felt, even if they could not act upon it. A man might write of a telak's touch in veiled verse. He might describe a bath not as purification, but as temptation. He might immortalize the steam that clouded his judgment, the scent of another's skin, the heat that refused to fade. These weren't imagined feelings. They were experiences transformed into metaphor, because that was the only way they could safely exist. The bathhouse and the poem existed in harmony, one feeding the other. What was felt in the hammam was written later in silence. What was written in verse was relived with each return to the steam. The price of looking too long. Yet for all its ambiguity, the bathhouse was not without danger. The Ottoman legal system varied in its approach to same-sex acts. While certain periods were more lenient, and enforcement often depended on social status and discretion, the fundamental message was clear. Such behavior was outside the bounds of acceptability. What mattered most was appearance. A man could feel as he pleased, so long as no one else saw it. Privacy was protection, exposure was peril. In the hammam, the boundaries were fragile. A telak who responded too warmly to a client might be dismissed, shamed, or worse. A bather who stared too intently could find himself the subject of gossip or accusation. Every movement had to be calculated. Every glance was a risk, and yet, despite this danger, or perhaps because of it, men still returned. The hammam remained one of the few places where closeness was permitted, even if it came with tension. There were no safe confessions, only sensations, raw and unresolved. The risk wasn't just physical, it was emotional. To want and be unable to say so, to see and be afraid to act, to brush against another man in the water and feel it echo for hours, even days. This was the cost of desire that dared not speak its name. Ghosts of the bathhouse. Today, many hammams still exist, restored, rebranded, softened for tourists. The architecture remains, but the electricity is gone. The walls are clean, the rules are clear. What they no longer hold are the thousands of quiet moments that once passed between men who wanted each other. These spaces were never officially erotic, yet they pulsed with erotic energy, held in restraint, felt through gesture, and carried silently away. The stories of those men were never written down, but they are etched into the stone. In the worn corner of a marble slab where someone sat too long, in the faded towel hooks, in the quiet steam that still fogs the mirrors. These men did not leave behind letters or testimonies. Their desire left no names, but it left memory. And that memory lives on, not just in poetry, but in the physical remains of the places where they once dared to feel. What the walls still remember. History rarely records the emotional lives of ordinary men. It focuses on laws, leaders, wars. But another kind of history exists, the history of glances, of touches, of the ache that never found a voice. The hammam was not meant to house longing, but it did. It became a theater for the drama of forbidden desire, a place where men who could never speak of what they wanted could at least feel it, briefly, powerfully, and without shame. This story is not about romance, it is about tension. about lives lived half awake in the heat of the bathhouse, about love that couldn't bloom but still grew roots. The walls of the hammam saw everything and said nothing. They were the perfect confidants for a world where silence was survival. Even now, centuries later, when we walk through these stone chambers, their memory lingers, in the mist, in the air, in the space between the tiles. They remember the men who once looked too long, the men who wanted more, the men who found, if not fulfillment, then at least recognition. And that, in a world of repression, was something close to freedom. If this was informational, leave a like and subscribe to the channel and join us next time as we uncover the untold tales of history.